The city streets were teeming with life, but none of it mattered to the boy huddled in the corner of the busy downtown park. His clothes were tattered, his face streaked with dirt, and his eyes, haunted, empty, looked up at the bustling world with longing. There was no place for him in the world of skyscrapers and expensive cars, where the lucky few thrived, oblivious to the suffering that often went unnoticed. His stomach growled, a harsh reminder of the long hours spent on the cold pavement. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His name was Tyler, and he had never known a life without struggle, without uncertainty. As he sat on the steps of a grand building, the world moved around him as if he didn't exist, until a man in a suit walked past. His polished shoes clicked on the pavement, the sound of wealth, success, and power. Tyler's hand reached out instinctively, his voice cracking with hunger. "Excuse me, sir, can you spare a bit of food? I haven't eaten in days." The CEO stopped, a quick glance over Tyler's ragged form. What happened next would change both their lives forever. Tyler had once been a child full of hope, dreaming of a future brighter than the dark alleys he now called home. His family had been torn apart by hardship, and after losing both parents at a young age, Tyler had been forced to grow up far too quickly. He was placed into the foster system, bouncing from one family to the next, never feeling truly safe, never feeling wanted. His heart hardened with each rejection, and his dreams of a loving family faded into the background of survival. As he grew older, Tyler found himself on the streets, unable to break free from the cycle of poverty. Every attempt to find work was met with rejection, and every day spent searching for food and shelter left him feeling smaller, more invisible. The streets became his home, and he learned to endure, to adapt to the harsh realities that life had thrown at him. For years, Tyler had tried to hold on to hope, but it was becoming harder. The cold was relentless in the winter, and the scorching heat unforgiving in the summer. The city, his city, felt like a prison, a place where the rich and powerful moved like giants while the homeless were forgotten, left to fend for themselves in the shadows. But despite the pain, Tyler kept going. He survived on scraps, lived in shelters when he could, and kept his head down when he couldn't. He knew his situation wasn't unique, that thousands of people like him lived in the shadows. Still, something in him, deep down, held on to the idea that one day his life would change. But today he wasn't thinking of that. All he thought about was the hunger gnawing at him and the voice of that CEO who had walked past. The CEO, Daniel Brooks, didn't stop immediately when Tyler asked for food. He hesitated, a flash of discomfort crossing his face as he glanced down at the boy sitting in front of him. Daniel was used to the homeless asking for money, but this was different. The raw vulnerability in Tyler's eyes was something he couldn't ignore, even if he tried. For a moment, Daniel considered walking away. He had a meeting to attend, a busy schedule, and didn't have time to engage with someone like Tyler. He was a successful businessman, a man who had worked hard for everything he had. The world didn't owe anyone anything, especially not the homeless. But something tugged at him. It wasn't just the boy's plea. It was the sadness, the hopelessness in his eyes, the feeling that he had seen this boy before, or maybe seen a version of him in his own past. Something in Daniel shifted. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a granola bar, handing it to Tyler. "Here," Daniel said, his voice soft but firm. "This should hold you over for a while." Tyler's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, he just stared at the granola bar, as though it were a lifeline tossed to him in an endless ocean. He grabbed it quickly, his hands trembling with both hunger and gratitude. "Thank you," Tyler whispered, his voice cracking. "You don't know what this means." Daniel's gaze softened, and he nodded. He turned to walk away, but something about Tyler's words lingered in the air. The simplicity of the request, the humbling reality of the boy's situation, echoed in Daniel's mind. He'd been busy building his empire, but the truth was, he had been so wrapped up in his own success that he had forgotten what it meant to be human. And then, in a flash, everything changed. Tyler's words, simple yet profound, stopped Daniel in his tracks. "You're the CEO of the Brooks Corporation, aren't you?" Tyler asked quietly. Daniel froze. How did Tyler know who he was? The question caught Daniel off guard. He turned back to look at Tyler, his heart pounding. How did this boy, who had clearly spent most of his life on the streets, recognize him? His first instinct was to brush it off, to ignore it. But the curiosity in Tyler's eyes, the genuine interest, made him pause. Yeah, Daniel said slowly, his voice uncertain. I am. How do you know that? Tyler's face remained stoic, though there was a flicker of emotion behind his eyes, something Daniel couldn't quite place. I've seen you before, Tyler said quietly. You've come to the shelter a few times. You've donated to the food bank. Daniel was stunned. He had been so caught up in his own world. He hadn't realized that his donations were making an impact, that someone like Tyler, someone living on the very streets he had built his success upon, might actually be aware of him. He had always prided himself on being a philanthropist, a man who gave back. But as Tyler spoke, Daniel realized that donating money and showing up at a charity event weren't enough. The system he had contributed to, the one that kept people like Tyler trapped in poverty, wasn't being changed. His charity was just a band-aid on a wound that needed surgery. Tyler's words had opened a door in Daniel's mind, a realization that shook him to his core. All his life, he had worked to build wealth and power, but now, facing the young boy before him, he realized he had built it on the backs of people like Tyler, people who had been forgotten, discarded, and left to fend for themselves. Suddenly, everything felt wrong. All the money, all the success, it all seemed hollow. Daniel dropped the bag he was carrying and sat down beside Tyler on the cold, hard steps. The city around them continued as if nothing had changed, but Daniel felt different. Something inside him was awakening. I'm sorry, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I've been so blind. Tyler looked at him, his eyes searching, his face softening. I just need a chance, he said. That's all anyone like me needs, a chance. And in that moment, Daniel made a decision. Daniel stood up, a fire burning inside him that he hadn't felt in years. He looked down at Tyler, who was still sitting on the steps, his back hunched, his hands clutching the granola bar like it was the most precious thing in the world. I'm going to give you a chance, Daniel said, his voice resolute. You won't have to struggle anymore. Tyler's head snapped up. What do you mean? Daniel smiled, a genuine smile that came from deep within. I'm going to make sure you have a home, a job, an education. I'm going to change your life, Tyler. For the first time in years, Tyler felt something stir in him. Hope. He had never believed that something like this could happen to him. But here now it was real. Daniel took out his phone and made a call. Within minutes, arrangements were being made for Tyler to stay in a safe place, to receive counseling, and to get back on his feet. The wheels of change were set in motion. Tyler couldn't believe it. He'd gone from asking for food on the streets to having the opportunity of a lifetime, all because the CEO had looked past his situation and seen him as a person. Months passed, and Tyler's life transformed in ways he never thought possible. Daniel kept his word, providing Tyler with not just shelter and food, but the opportunity to build a future. Tyler enrolled in a program to finish his education, got a job at a local community center, and even started mentoring other homeless youth, just as Daniel had once mentored him. The story of how a homeless boy asked a CEO for food and changed his life spread throughout the city. People began to see Tyler not as a statistic, but as a person, someone with potential, someone deserving of a second chance. Daniel, too, found himself changed. He became more involved in social programs, using his platform to advocate for real change. No longer content with simply writing checks, he now worked hand in hand with organizations to make lasting improvements for the homeless, the forgotten ones. And Tyler, he became a symbol of hope, a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to change a life forever. If Tyler's story moved you, and you believe that compassion has the power to change lives, then make sure to hit the subscribe button for more inspiring, heartwarming stories. Every day, people just like Tyler are given second chances, and your support can help bring even more life-changing moments to light. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in the world. Together, we can make a difference, one story at a time. Thank you for watching. And remember, a small act of kindness can change everything.